Hey everyone, how are you all doing? Welcome back to another video. Today we're going to be covering another excerpt from The Secrets of the Sith, which is a canon book which covers Palpatine's point of view of pretty much everything that's written in this book. It's pretty interesting. There's some things that I felt were a little bit conflicting, but some things that I think are really expansive in Star Wars in general. Today's video and topic is going to go over Palpatine's point of view of the Knights of Ren. Now, if you ask me, the Knights of Ren were promising. When we first saw them in The Force Awakens, I thought they were going to be extremely cool, really badass, and pretty powerful. Especially when we saw the Knights of Ren with Kylo in that flashback scene that Rey had when she touched Anakin Skywalker's lightsaber, where they were standing on some planet, most likely Luke's Jedi Temple, and they had just killed a whole bunch of people. And then of course, we saw them a little bit in Episode 8 and then Episode 9, but they really didn't do anything. And what we'll learn here is Palpatine's point of view of them, as well as their powers, or rather lack thereof. The Knights of Ren. Those who dwell in the unknown regions have long whispered legends of the Knights of Ren. This band of marauders was said to have burned their way across worlds, consuming everything in their path. In recent years, an enclave of warriors stepped from the darkness to claim that name, and the fear it instilled as their own. Each of the Knights of Ren harbors the shadow of the dark side within them, but unlike the Sith, they are not trained to harness that connection to its fullest potential. The late Luke Skywalker once claimed that the Knights used the Force like a hammer rather than a blade, perhaps the only truth to ever fall from his lips. But for some jobs, a blunt instrument is more than sufficient. The Knights of Ren do not adhere to any code, doing whatever they must to triumph. The price to join their failed ranks is simple: choose a worthy target and give them a good death. This cost was one young Ben Solo paid in full when he struck down the group's master and assumed leadership of the Knights of Ren himself. So a few things I want to touch on in this definition here. First of all, the fact that Luke says they use the Force like a hammer instead of a blade is kind of interesting to me, because a blade compared to a hammer is so much more precise, so much more elegant, so much more civilized, if you will. Whereas a hammer, of course, is just pretty much used for destruction, of course, and unless you're trying to nail something and build it together. But in this example, it's most likely used to destroy. Now, what I also wonder is, were these guys as powerful as Sith Inquisitors? And my thoughts on that are probably not at all. Sith Inquisitors, while they weren't really Sith, they were just fallen Jedi that were trained in the ways of the dark side, probably could have kicked the ass of every single Knight of Ren. Something else Palpatine wrote that I sort of am reading into here is he said, each of the Knights of Ren harbors the shadow of the dark side within them, but unlike the Sith, they are not trained to harness that connection to its fullest potential. So something George Lucas always said was that everyone can use the Force, it just depends if you want to train to use it or not. Now, of course, there are other factors in there, such as genetics, propensity, your overall potential to use the Force, like Anakin's overall potential was extremely high, whereas maybe Watto's potential to use the Force, if he really, really tried, wouldn't have been really all that much. Maybe he could have moved a very light object or something with his mind at most. But who knows? Hey, maybe Watto trained, he would have been, the chosen one. But something I find thought-provoking here is that the Knights of Ren, while they couldn't really harness the full potential of the Force the way a Sith could, perhaps even the way maybe Ben could, and mind you, he was no Sith, they still were able to use aspects of the dark side. So what really made them so dangerous then? It kind of just seemed like they were assassins, with maybe a little bit of skill in the Force, but not really, because they never really trained. Which is strange, because they were always around Kylo Ren, so I'm sure they would have picked up something. It also mentions how there were long whispered legends of the Knights of Ren. Why? They weren't really all that special or powerful at all, so what was so special about them? It was said that they had burned their way across worlds, consuming everything in their path. So I guess this was a cult that was going on for a long period of time, and they just sort of switched members. Something else that also confuses me, which if you guys understand this and I don't, please let me know in the comments and explain it to me. What's with their whole entry to become a Knight of Ren? The price to join their failed ranks is simple: choose a worthy target and give them a good death. So what, basically just choose anybody? I could choose a merchant sitting out on the street in some village somewhere on some random planet, give him a good death, and then I'm a Knight of Ren? Or do they mean choose a worthy target of the Knights of Ren and kill them? Perhaps the wording could have been a little more descriptive, but the Knights of Ren were characters that I remember really looking forwards to in episode 7 for episode 8 because I thought they were so cool. I mean, they're just these really menacing looking, not Mandalorian, but they definitely had some inspiration of these samurai. And they were carrying weapons and they were rolling with Kylo Ren, so it just made you think, who are these guys? These guys must have some sort of like ancient knowledge or something. And it almost seems like they do, because Palpatine says that they went through worlds and they burned through everything and they tried to absorb everything they could and scour everything they could. So what exactly did they learn? This is something that really wasn't explained at all in the movies or extrapolated upon. So I feel like there's a lot of room for growth. I feel like if they want to make some sort of a backstory, not just on the Knights of Ren, but maybe in some spin-off show that takes place during the sequels, they can definitely show the Knights of Ren and they can show us how cool and badass they actually were, which is unfortunate we never saw in the films, because they just kind of had a very anticlimactic death and they didn't really give Kylo Ren that big of a fight. Either way, that's what Palpatine thought of the Knights of Ren. Not too much to talk about there, but let me know what you all thought about the Knights of Ren. And if you've made up any sort of backstory for them in your own mind and you think it's pretty cool, then just let me know in the comments below too. Hope you enjoyed this canon video. The information was canon. Of course, my thoughts are not. There's just a theory, hence the channel name. I appreciate your time, and I will see you guys in the next video. Until then, remember, the Force will be with you always.